Chapter 1. Akbar had a dream. His dream was to make the most beautiful silk cloth in the whole of India. It was summer holidays. Every day, Akbar sat with his grandfather at the loom. They wove long lengths of silk with the most beautiful patterns. Look at the patterns I have just made, said Akbar. Grandfather looked at the piece of silk. It is very good, he said. Thank you, grandfather, said Akbar. One day soon, I will make the most beautiful silk cloth in the whole of India. Grandfather smiled and shook his head. It is impossible, he said. Why? Asked Akbar. Because you are only a young boy. You are only 8 years old. That doesn't matter, said Akbar. Akbar was annoyed. It did not matter how old he was. He knew he could make the most beautiful silk cloth in India. It was his dream. Grandfather thought for a moment. We must go to Agra to see the Taj Mahal, he said. It is the most beautiful building in India. Perhaps we will see some patterns there that will help you to make the most beautiful silk cloth in India. Akbar was pleased. Grandfather often told him about the Taj Mahal. The great emperor Shah Jahan had ordered 20,000 craftsmen to build the Taj Mahal. Its white marble walls were covered with jewels. Can we really go to see the Taj Mahal? Asked Akbar. Every year, grandfather talked about going to see the Taj Mahal. Every year, he was either too busy to go or he did not have enough money for the train fare. Yes, said grandfather. I have saved nearly enough rupees for the train fare. If we sell the silk cloth that you have just made, we will have enough money. Grandfather and Akbar folded up the silk and took it through the streets to the market. Soon they reached Omar's store. Omar was Akbar's uncle. His store was piled high with bundles of silk cloth. Hello, Omar, said grandfather. Hello, said Omar. What have you got for me today? It's a beautiful piece of silk cloth that Akbar has made, said grandfather. Omar held up the silk cloth and looked at it. He winked at Akbar. It is a beautiful silk cloth, he said, but it isn't the most beautiful in India. Look, it is not as beautiful as this one. Omar pointed to a roll of red and gold silk cloth that would be used for a wedding saree. Akbar smiled. He knew that his uncle was teasing him. Everyone knew about his dream. Everyone knew that he wanted to make the most beautiful silk cloth in India. I am going to see the Taj Mahal, said Akbar. And when I come back, I will make the most beautiful silk in India. Is this true? Asked Omar. Are you really going to see the Taj Mahal? Yes, said grandfather. If you will give us a good price for Akbar's silk, we will go tomorrow. Tomorrow? Akbar had not dreamed that it would be so soon. Will you buy my silk, Uncle Omar? He begged. I must go with grandfather to see the Taj Mahal. Uncle Omar smiled. He counted out some money and gave it to grandfather. Now, will you have enough for the train tickets? He asked. Grandfather counted the money. Uncle Omar had been very kind. I will indeed, he said. Tomorrow we will go to see the Taj Mahal. Run home, Akbar, and tell your father. Akbar ran home as fast as he could. He had a lot to do before tomorrow. He had to find paper on which to draw new patterns and pencils to mark the colors. When he saw the Taj Mahal, he was going to make the most beautiful silk cloth in India. Chapter 2. The train journey to Agra was a long one. Akbar sat in his seat and looked out of the window. I can't wait to see the Taj Mahal, he said. Are we nearly there? Not quite yet, said grandfather. Shall I tell you a story to help pass the time? Yes, please, grandfather, said Akbar. Tell me the story of the Taj Mahal. Grandfather smiled. He sat back in his seat and began. A long time ago, a young prince met a beautiful girl. She had a market stall close to the palace. The prince wanted to buy all the goods from her stall, but she would not let him. She smiled at him and made him laugh. The prince, Shah Jahan, fell in love with her. After several years, they got married. Shah Jahan became emperor. He called his wife Mumtaz Mahal, which meant chosen one of the palace. He loved her very much, and she was never very far from his side. One day, Shah Jahan had to go and fight a battle. While he and his soldiers were away fighting, Mumtaz gave birth to a little girl. The baby survived, but sadly, Mumtaz died. Grandfather stopped speaking. There were tears in his eyes. Akbar did not know if the tears were for Mumtaz or for Grandma. Grandma had died last year, and grandfather was still very lonely. Did you love Grandma as much as Shah Jahan loved Mumtaz? Asked Akbar. Grandfather nodded. I did, he said, but I am not sad. Grandma and I had a long and happy life together. Was Shah Jahan sad? Asked Akbar. He was very sad, said grandfather. Everyone in the city was sad too. No one was allowed to dance or laugh or sing. Shah Jahan did not want his wife to be forgotten. He sent for craftsmen from all over India and ordered them to build the finest tomb in the whole world. It took them 20 years to build the Taj Mahal. Akbar stared out of the carriage window. 20 years was a very long time. Grandfather, he said, I don't want to take 20 years to make the most beautiful silk cloth in India. I want to make it now. Grandfather nodded his head wisely. I know you do, he said, but first you must have a plan. You must know what you want the silk to look like. You must know its color, its pattern. Do you know those things already? No, said Akbar. Not really. I have ideas. I have pictures in my mind, but they are not very clear. When I try to draw the patterns of what I see, it disappears from my head. That happens to me too, said grandfather. Now I only make the patterns that I know well. I make the patterns that my father made and his father made before him. I want to make new patterns, said Akbar. I want to make patterns that no one has ever seen on silk before. You are like Shah Jahan, said grandfather. You want to make the most beautiful thing that has ever been seen. This was true. Akbar knew that he would never be happy until he had made the silk he dreamed of. He hoped that the Taj Mahal would fill him with ideas for the silk pattern and its colors. As soon as he knew what they were, he could start work. Look, said grandfather, we are in Agra. We can't be far from the Taj Mahal now. The train stopped and many people got out. Grandfather and Akbar let themselves be carried along the platform by the crowds. Soon they were in the streets, heading for the Taj Mahal. I can see it, cried Akbar. A beautiful white dome sparkled in the sunlight, and four tall towers stretched into the sky. Isn't it wonderful? Gasped grandfather. Akbar didn't answer. He was too busy gazing at the Taj Mahal. Even in his dreams, he had not imagined anything quite so lovely. Chapter 3. As soon as Akbar saw the Taj Mahal, he knew that this was the best moment in his life. The gardens of the Taj Mahal stretched in front of him. Akbar's eyes went past the canals and the green trees to the very end of the gardens. There stood the Taj Mahal. Akbar walked slowly towards his grandfather. The closer he got, the more clearly he could see the jewels set into the marble walls. They were red, green, and yellow. They made patterns of roses and tulips. This is the pattern I want, gasped Akbar. This is the pattern for my silk cloth. Wait, said grandfather. There is more inside. It can't be more beautiful than this, said Akbar. He got out his paper and pencils, then started to sketch the patterns that he could see. He drew flowers and leaves, twisting and twirling and curling together. He chose colors that he had never used before. They were the colors of the shining jewels. Akbar drew and drew until his hand hurt. That is enough, Akbar, said grandfather gently. Let us go inside now. Akbar followed grandfather into the building. Inside was Mamta's tomb. It stood on a high platform. Next to it stood another tomb. Whose tomb is that? Asked Akbar. It belongs to Shah Jahan, whispered grandfather. He asked to be buried next to his wife. Round the two tombs stood a marble screen. It was carved to look like lace and decorated with rubies and emeralds. The twisting, turning flowers that covered the screen were even more beautiful than the ones Akbar had seen outside. Are you going to copy these flowers? Asked grandfather. Akbar shook his head. No, he said, my sketches could never show the beauty of these flowers. When Akbar had seen enough of the tombs, they went back outside. Akbar's mind was swirling with colors and ideas and patterns. I want to go home, he said. Grandfather and Akbar took the train back home. They traveled together in silence. They were both lost in their dreams. Grandfather dreamed of Grandma and how she would have loved to see the Taj Mahal. Akbar dreamed of the silk cloth he was going to weave. When they got home, Akbar sat down by the loom. He looked at the colored threads he had and realized that he would need new colors for his silk cloth. Can we go and see Uncle Omar tomorrow? He asked. Grandfather took Akbar to Omar's store. They chose new colors of silk thread for Akbar to weave. The green must be like emeralds, said Akbar, and the red must be like rubies. Omar found the colors that Akbar wanted. I don't want any money for the thread, said Omar. I just want to see the finished silk cloth. Akbar took the thread home and started work. He looked at the sketches he had made. He shut his eyes and thought about the patterns that swirled around his head. He thought for the tulips and the roses. He thought about the towers and the dome. Little by little, Akbar wove his design. The idea that were trapped inside his head became trapped in the pattern of the silk. The cloth grew longer and longer. It grew more and more beautiful. At last, Akbar had finished it. He held it up for everyone to see. It's beautiful, gasped grandfather in amazement. I've done what I said I would, grandfather. I have made the most beautiful silk cloth in the whole of India. Let's take it to show Uncle Omar, said grandfather. He will want to see it. Grandfather and Akbar hurried through the streets. They found Omar at his stall. Look, Uncle Omar, said Akbar. Look at what I have made. Uncle Omar could not believe his eyes. He took the silk from Akbar and cradled it in his arms. He brushed his fingers tenderly over the cloth. He gazed at the wonderful patterns. Finally, he let out a soft sigh. Akbar, he said, this is truly the most beautiful silk cloth in India. One day it will be as famous as the Taj Mahal, and you will be as famous as Shah Jahan.